Hey, welcome back to Passionate About Music Education, a channel dedicated to you, the music educator. My name is Rachel Hardman, and today this is the 100th video that I'm posting up onto the YouTube channel. Most of my content, as you know, if you've been following the channel for a while, and if you haven't, obviously make sure you follow and subscribe. It's really about sharing good music practice in the classroom with instrumental and music classroom teachers like yourself. Over 25 years of being in the classroom, it was a great way for me to share what I had learned, my experiences, where I'd had success, where I learned from failure like we all do, and to be able to share that and maybe help a few music teachers along the line have the same passion and love for music education like I did. Alongside it, my content also includes stress management, self-care, personal growth, because in truth, so much of our work is by ourselves. If you're a music teacher, generally you're in the classroom all day teaching the children and you're the only person in that room. Occasionally you might get a teaching assistant, occasionally you might even be lucky enough to work in a department with more than one person. But the majority of the time you're on your own. So it can become quite a lonely profession, and also because of our nature of our job, the amount of classroom work we do, but also the expectation of all the extracurricular, report writing, concerts, supporting our students, helping them audition, go to university, even just practicing the piano to accompany our students, just takes up so much of our time in a good, mostly in a positive way. It does take a lot of our time, and there are certain points throughout the year that are more stressful as educators than others. That whole lead up to the Christmas concert, the lead up to the summer term when people want graduations or their summer concerts, and of course while we're doing that and trying to ensure our students get to that standard that they need to, we're also managing the classroom, the exam coursework, attending meetings, doing parents' evening, writing the reports, learning how to cope with all of that, those stressful times, is actually a challenge. And it was one of the things that I just felt that wasn't talked about enough between educators. Apart from over the last few years in the sort of pandemic, really stress management and how to balance that job hasn't been discussed enough for teachers and educators, and we're between educators in an honest and open way. There's still too much shame-based relationships within education, and the fact that if you can't cope with the stress, then it's because you're not doing a good enough job, you're not getting a good work-life balance, etc., etc. And that actually is truthfully not the case. So where did it all start? Really, the whole point of the videos came from learning an awful lot about personal growth, stress management, self-care, trauma-related experiences, and it came from my own personal life. In the beginning of 2020, my husband left. I was in the starts of a severe midlife crisis, depression, that I had no idea about. I had no idea it even truly existed, other than the fact it was the concept of the man or the woman, because it applies to both, going off with a younger person and buying a Ferrari, because that's all we ever see it as depicted on TVs and films, and sort of almost joked about. But actually wasn't a joke. It was really just absolutely sort of devastating moment in my life that this all sort of kind of crashed and fell to bits in terms of our marriage as he went into the crisis. I had a choice of to wallow in self-pity and feel sorry for myself, which I'm not going to lie, I did at times, or to find out why, to understand. All educators, we all want to know why, how can we help, what can we do? You wouldn't be in teaching if you didn't really care about helping other people. So it's like this kind of dive into what was going on, why had this happened, well, what could I do to help, how could I support, how could I help the person that was the most important person to me. So it kind of led me into a whole series of research, trying to unpick what that trauma crisis is, to really understand beyond the superficial information that was out there about what midlife crisis is. And And to be honest, the more I read about it and more I understood about the fact it was very much about fear of death, fear of aging, fear of losing your identity, fear of wasted time, but fear that was hidden and trapped in you from childhood, all that childhood trauma that was repressed, not resolved, and that we carry through. And you can be the most highly educated, grounded person, and then suddenly it just comes out of nowhere and catches you up, and you just don't even know it's going to happen. We see trauma with our children all the time, and we see how they overcome it in the classroom and in school life and go on to be successful, never to know that maybe that trauma would come back in, the 40s and 50s in such an impactful way. So really diving into this whole topic kind of led into learning about relationships and masculine and feminine energy and law of attraction and your own personal energy, and learning about personal growth and mindset and all this really good stuff. And what really came out of it, other than it being incredibly helpful for me in that moment in time, and generally we learn a lot of these important life lessons at the time when we need it, either because we're going through pain and that's what we need to find out and find the answers, or because we want to learn something new and we want to, move forward to pleasure. What really surprised me the most was there was so much out in the world about personal growth, good professional habits, good self-care, great advice about all sorts of topics that I had never had anybody talk about as a professional development session in school. We have done every form of professional development in terms of education, supporting children, the Ofsted, the budget, all of all of this kind of stuff. I was disappointed that there was so much good strategies out there that had half of them being shared with me as an educator. I'd have been a much better educator for years. I would have been able to cope with stress much better, been able to deal with relationships with other staff in a more positive way. Or if that's stuff that we get wrong, not through any fault of our own, but just because we don't know, would have been much easier had we kind of stepped away from this shame-based education system and been much more open and vulnerable with each other and helped each other, because the content's out there. It's out there all over the place. So really that was why I started the channel, because I just felt that had some of this information been shared as a music educator, it would have been more helpful for me, for my students, and for the people around me. As this is my 100th video, it was a great opportunity to really reflect on what I had learned over the last couple of years of making these videos and doing all the research. So the first concept is fear. And really every problem that we have is rooted in fear. It's rooted in whether we are brave enough to get up on the stage, whether we're brave enough to perform in front of people, whether we're brave enough to move country, start a relationship, or if everything is rooted in fear. Everything that limits us, everything that stops us from doing the next courageous thing is stuck in that fear factor. And truthfully, when you kind of pull back why we are stuck in fear, other than the whole concept of how the brain works and it's there to protect us, and we have our ego and all of that kind of stuff, it still keeps coming back to the message somewhere along the line that you and I learned, which was we were not good enough. We were not worthy of love. And once you kind of come to that point and you really understand that, it's really where the steps forward out of fear to try new things, to be incredibly brave, which also requires you to be incredibly vulnerable and courageous, is really the way forward. We need to help not just our students, but ourselves, our colleagues, our friends, our family, to not be afraid, to understand that when we are afraid, that fear is rooted in something deep within us, in our body, within us, that some message somewhere along the line that we are not good enough, we're not worthy of love. There have been times where I've stopped making videos, not because I didn't want to make the content, but because I just had this whole imposter syndrome going on, and nobody's watching this content, it's not going to help anybody, why am I doing this, I've just got nothing to say. And truthfully, it's all still rooted in fear that it's not good enough, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy of it, that I've not got anything to say. And that's not true, but it's really hard sometimes to unpack that unless you do the healing, unless you do the reflection and understand why. And we all carry that because somewhere along our whole journey from childhood and education and relationships, we hear that message. And it doesn't really go away. It's still, this stuff happens, even now as a grown woman. But it is understanding that. So if I could share anything with that whole anxiety and depression, is rooted in the worry of the future, worry of the past. It's constant fear, us trying to control the situation, trying to unpick and keep ourselves safe, because that's the role of the ego, and it is all rooted in fear. So if any work that you do, if you can look at that message of where did you get told that you weren't good enough and that you weren't worthy of love, where can you heal that? It doesn't mean going and find that person and having a big old shouting match out. It's actually healing the pain inside yourself. One of the great strategies is to really think about, in a quiet moment, where that pain comes from, and you'll have an image come up, and it is going back to that wounded child, that wounded moment, and actually giving love to that younger version of yourself. You give that love, you give that comfort that they needed in that moment that they didn't get. That's how you kind of start to heal those fears. One of the most powerful messages I learned was from a lady called Brené Brown, an American lady, studies hard emotions, shame-based emotions. Written loads of books, there's loads of TED Talks and there's stuff on YouTube. She's got podcasts, so I highly recommend it. I read one of her books called Dare to Lead, and it was so insightful about how much shame-based leadership is within education or within our society, and how demoralizing it is, and how it continues to send that message that you're not worthy and you're not good enough, and keeps us in fear and keeps us in these limiting beliefs. And she talks so honestly about all of the research that she's done, a specialist in shame-based research, and unpicking that and learning about that is a really important concept, because we all carry it, we all do it. Unfortunately, we all do that unknowingly to others, and of course we all receive that too. And understanding how that has such an impact on your limiting beliefs, and the only way to really get through that kind of fear is to take the courage of stepping into the unknown, to be vulnerable. So if you ever really wanted to study anything that would help in terms of feeling worthy, feeling better about yourself, understanding why you have these, terrible moments in our lives, and we all go through them. Can't go through life with everything being, beautiful all the way through. I highly recommend her books and just watching anything by Brené Brown. She's so clever, but she really has spent a whole life dedicated to learning about shame and blame and guilt and judgment, and how we as a society put that onto people. We put that onto women, or society we put it onto men, and how that impacts our relationships and our own personal journey, and how we can let go of all those judgments, how we are brave enough to stand in our own truth. And she talks about that sometimes that's the loneliest place to be, but that we have to do it, and that we will be with people who are prepared to rumble in the arena, as she says, rather than being on the stands. And it is taking courage to do the things in life that you want to do. She's really great at talking about how to get to that next level of clarity, which I just think is fantastic. And part of that is also letting go of other people's opinions. I think we're so taught to, value what other people think, especially as teachers. It's like somebody's coming in to observe my lesson, and their judgment is a reflection of how I am as a teacher, and letting go of what people think, and not disregarding it in a rude way, but it's also it's like, these are your judgments, opinions at this moment in time, in this snapshot, but it's not a reality of what goes on. I mean, we've all experienced that as teachers, whether that's, somebody coming in from Ofsted, or whether that's observations and reviews, and that, sort of false environment where people come in and then make a snap judgment of any moment. Or the worst is the one day you are totally stressed out because, we all have those really bad days, and that's their judgment of you for the rest of your life. They never let go. They never see beyond that. And It's actually letting go of what other people's opinion is. You know, wherever you've had that difficult conversation with a colleague or a student or a parent, and you've come home and you're upset about it, which we've all been there, it's their opinion. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to prove them wrong. You do not have to do anything other than be at peace with yourself. Let go of other people's expectations and opinions. Let go of, you know, other people's judgments and shame. Because really, as long as you're at peace with it, that's really generally what matters. And if you do that, it will help you create healthy boundaries. You know, which is, everybody talks about self-care, but it's actually coming about with boundaries. Being able to confidently say, no, I can't do that. No, I can't attend this meeting. No, I would love to be on that working party, but this moment in time, I can't do that. It's really hard because the instant reaction from somebody else is to go to those hard emotions, the shame and the judgment and the blame and negativity. And of course, we all then, you know, feel that guilt that we should be doing it. And, you know, that's not being part of a team and you're not supporting the students. That, you know, that whole guilt sentence that's said to us as educators. And actually the boundaries are really for you, because if you don't have them, then the resentment builds up and the anxiety and the stress level, and then you don't turn up good for yourself, let alone helping anybody else. I mean, the last area I want to talk about today is obviously self-care and well-being, and your mental well-being, your good health, and how important that really is. And I know we've had this conversation over the last few years, and you know, you've maybe even had a little PD on it, you know, and had that professional development session and got, you know, a couple of tips about sleeping properly and you know, getting good food and making sure you have a drink of water, possibly doing a little exercise. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that on the surface level. It is part of self-care. Self-care is great, particularly in those hard times. And it's where we don't go. We kind of don't go to the healthy habits, the healthy things that we know that work for us, that make us feel who we are, that make us unique and individual. Let's be honest, music is what makes you happy. You wouldn't be following this channel as a musician if it didn't light you up, if you're just sharing your passion with music with others didn't make you happy. But sometimes when we're in that dark and, you know, gloomy kind of place, that's the thing that goes. We stop doing it for us because we're so busy doing it for everybody else. We're not walking, we're not spending time with family, we're not connected. And there's a whole art concept called pies, which I've talked about on other videos. The physical, intellectual, emotional and spiritual, or social, whichever one of those S's you want to use, where we include that in our self-care. When I learned more about this, I realised I don't do the physical. I was terrible at exercising. It was always the excuse, I'm too busy with work, I'm too tired. And it wasn't, I just didn't do it. I didn't really understand the value of it until I started doing it, and still made it part of my routine to go and do physical exercise, because going to playing pickleball gave me a chance to learn a new skill. So it was intellectually stimulating. I got to link and meet people socially and have that sort of connection, whether you want to call that spiritual or social. And suddenly, like, and also, more importantly, I got quite good at it. I mean, I'm no pickleball whiz. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I'm going to tournament and, you know, I've got a 4.0 level and all that kind of stuff. But I actually did something that was completely different as an adult, and I got quite good at it. And I was quietly happy about that because it made me feel better, made me want to learn more, made me want to go and, you know, watch some videos and learn some more, and, you know, go and have lessons. But it connected with all the parts of the pies, you know, the physical, intellectual, emotional and spiritual. And that's really important for self-care. And on those days when we are not in a good place, it's because you haven't done any. You haven't done anything for you. You've just been give, share, put yourself out there, do things that don't necessarily light you up. I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes when we're sat in some of those meetings, they don't light us up in a positive, cheerful way. We hear another big, massive list of jobs to do, and we're just like, oh, how do we get past this list? And, you know, when am I going to actually eat? And I've got to plan that lesson, and, you know, stress levels grow. The more you start looking at all these different concepts, they're so linked, whether it's law of attraction or whether it's spirituality or whether it's, you know, personal growth to feel better. It's all about looking for that positive for us as humans to keep growing, whether that's, a physical concept or whether that is an emotional. We need to keep learning, we need to keep doing, we need to keep trying new things to keep feeling alive, to keep feeling who we are. And they're all rooted in this kind of idea of a positive mindset and to being grateful, to staying away from or steering away from those negative emotions, or to be aware of them when they turn up. We can't hide from being angry or sad or fearful or regret or sadness and depression. They come up. We can't avoid them, but we can notice that they're there, welcome them as part of all the emotional experiences that we have, and then move on from it. How do we move from it so that we don't get stuck in it? Well, it's things like journaling, it is things like meditation and doing gratitude and talking about what you're grateful for, watching the language you use, again making sure you exercise and get good sleep and eat healthy and drink the water and not become reliant on binge eating or comfort food eating, which I'm totally guilty of. It is learning new things, and it is also having human connection, whatever that looks like for you. Meditation has been one of my tools in my self-care kit. And before I sort of started doing this in 2020, I was like, I think it would be helpful. I see people doing it, but I haven't really ever done it. And I've tried a couple of times and I don't know, couldn't shut my mind off. And I was told, you need to shut your mind off and have silence. That's not really the case at all. But I found, a few people online who were doing guided meditation, and I sat and repeatedly did it daily. I made myself do it. I made that habit of committing to it, for a whole month. I was like, everybody keeps saying meditation is going to help me, particularly at this moment when I was, very upset from, breakdown in my marriage. I used a guided one. Somebody just spoke all the way through, and you sit there quietly, or you can lie down, you can put your hands across your chest, which kind of is very comforting. It feels a bit like being hugged. And it's if you're feeling any anxiety, it's kind of very reassuring to do this kind of motion for a couple of minutes. It does help bring that anxiety down. And what I learned, it's not about quietening the mind. I mean, obviously you do. It's actually learning to control your breath. It's learning to release all the stress in your body. It's being able to take, wherever you do it, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, even 1 minute, 2 minutes between classes. It is about just pausing, being in the moment and just stopping everything that's going on and just putting some calmness. And I wished I'd done it years ago, especially as a teacher. I mean, we all go from, we go to a staff meeting, we go straight to photocopier to try and photocopy that worksheet because we need it for period 2 and we haven't got time to do it in between. And then we teach period 1, we got year 7, and you go to year 11, and you go break duty, and then you go and teach year 8, and then you got year 12, and then you do a club, and you're eating a sandwich while doing a club, and then you go to the next 2 classes, and then there's some kind of other meeting that you have to go to, and then you go home, you answer all the emails, and then you plan for the next couple of days, or you're trying to find music. And we've all been in that situation where it's just relentless every day. I was like, gosh, no wonder you come home and you're exhausted mentally, because you just haven't stopped, you haven't unpacked any of it. And it's important to try and put that little pause moment. Even doing it in the classroom with your students, I started bringing it in, just putting that meditation music as they transferred from one classroom to mine, and just taking a couple of minutes, just calmness and breathing and focus on the breath. And for meditation, there's guided meditations. There is obviously just meditation music, just put it on in the background. You can sit in silence and just, listen to the noises that are going on in the house and just really try and fill the space and just have that calmness. And it really, if you don't try anything, meditation really does help. It also helps change your breathing. We kind of, with all of the stress and tension that we have, that builds up without us realising, that we store and stack inside of us, it does change our breathing. So again, meditation is a really great way of helping just sort that out. And I know when I'm struggling, I know when I'm not in a great place. It's generally when I've stopped doing meditation and the stress starts to build up, and I'm like, it's the first thing I go back to. It's the first thing I'm like, come on Rach, you need to do this because it will help. And you get itchy, agitated and irritated a little bit the first couple of times because you're like, oh, I need to calm. And then as you do it more frequently every day, it just it just helps. Your body automatically goes to that sort of rest position, which is, you know, a great way of being able to just take that pause off. You know, we live in a fast-paced society where there's so much expectation on us, so much expectation that we put on ourselves all the time. So thank you for following the channel, thank you for being here, thank you for watching any of the videos for more than, you know, 3 seconds. I appreciate the love in the community. I hope the content of, you know, how to teach music in the classroom has been helpful, and I hope these videos of, you know, self-care and ways to look after ourselves so we can stay in the classroom for a long time and still be healthy for us, healthy for the students, healthy for our colleagues, and you know, healthy for the people in our life as well. So I appreciate watching this 100th video. I promise to keep making them, and I'll see you again very shortly on the channel.